Good morning everybody. I'm making this video for my YouTube channel because there were several issues I wanted to discuss with you following our return from the UK this week. As many of you will know, Charles and I and our manager Ayub, who had a visa granted by the British government to come with us to Windsor Castle for the investiture, where I was awarded an MBE by King Charles III and was presented with the medal by Her Royal Highness the Princess Royal. We were very, very pleased given her commitment to equines generally, and the award was for services to equine welfare in Morocco. What good news for Morocco is that? However, when I returned, I was really very conscious of how things have changed in the UK since I lived there permanently well over 10 years ago now. It seemed to be so much more authoritarian. And the thing I noticed about going into Windsor Castle was the moment that we were met by the Metropolitan Police and went into the castle, everyone was so polite, so warm, so welcoming. And that contrasted very much of how I'd found life out on the streets, at the airports in particular. It has troubled me, and I tell you why. When we first came to retire in Morocco, I said very clearly I'd been politically active all my life, but I was not going to be involved in politics anymore. I was too old, and it was for young people now, and I was sure we'd see a growth in new parties such as the Green Party, etc., etc. And I was determined that we were just going to retire. However, my lifelong commitment to the principle of social justice really couldn't lie buried for very long. And as you know, we very soon started the charity out here where we rescue equines from all over Morocco. And for me, that brings a great sense of social justice because these are working animals who have served humankind all their working lives and end up abandoned either through disability, their owners can no longer afford to feed them, poverty, lack of education. And I really do believe that over a 10-year period, we have moved attitudes, and I haven't done that alone. That has been done with an amazing team that work with me here at Jargier. I'll come back to that point in a minute because I want to go back and tell you to some podcasts that I listened to overnight. I was very interested to hear the historian David Starkey, who's very concerned about the rise of authoritarianism in England particularly, and he's also extremely concerned about the effect that will have on democracy, the democracy that we inherited from our parents, our grandparents, the wonderfully peaceful country I was brought up in at the end of the war, when people were generous and supportive to each other. So I would recommend anyone to go back and listen to David Starkey. I wouldn't have done that at one time, but I was fascinated now. I also listened to a very long interview by someone from GB News who was interviewing a friend of hers called Bernie Swofford. And what struck me about that interview is Bernie was a woman who had spent the whole of her business life committed to social justice. And of much of what she said, I just felt so at one with. But she found herself arrested following the Southport deaths of the 3 young girls at the Taylor Swift event one weekend. Tragic, absolutely awful. And she was a social commentator, and she posted on X a comment, one that she cut and posted and made a comment of her own. within an hour or two, she realised that the comment was incorrect and she deleted it. But during that time, she was bombarded by tweets and comments from people who saw her very much as the right wing, because she had previously voiced criticism over the use of vaccines during the pandemic. They put the two together and were blaming the start of the riots in Southport very much on her post. I'm not going to go into that. That's not what I'm here for. But what I was interested in was to hear of her experiences when arrested. She was held for over 24 hours, never charged, and now any action against her has been dropped. But the life-changing experience that she went through and the authoritarianism she saw amongst the police, as if their truth was correct, but no one was prepared to listen to her truth. So she emphasised again the lack of open debate, as indeed David Starkey has. And I thought to myself, gosh, if I was still in the UK now, I'm sure to have been arrested, because those of you that know me know I will always make a comment if I think something is out of order or wrong. And I may well have been one of those people brought into a police station somewhere over the UK. So in many ways, I'm very pleased that we live here in Morocco and we do what we do. But that the concept of social justice and how communities seem to be breaking up in the UK made me think about other things in relation to ourselves. Bernie had mentioned in her interview that if you are encouraged to work from home and you live in an impoverished part of the UK, so you're working from home, you're not going out, you're not pushing yourself with colleagues, you're not projecting yourself forward, the future looks very bleak for you. You've lost opportunities and your life has changed maybe forever. And that brought me back to what we bought to Georgia. When we bought this huge raft of land and we started rescuing equines, I of course worked with people in the same way I would always have done all my life, again with a great sense of social justice. So people who came to work with us were not treated as equals because it couldn't be equal. We had come with some money to invest and we built the refuge. And a lot of the people who work here live in very, compared to the UK, very simple houses in family units, and their way of life is quite different. But we treated everybody with equal respect, and we were prepared to share what we had and share our ideas about our ethical values and principles and listen to the people who worked with us, and we learnt from them. And together we have built something quite special, and I think in many ways it's quite a social experiment without realizing we were doing it. So as you know, we have about 300 equines here now and 22 staff. But we have brought to many of our staff the opportunity to do a worthwhile job that they feel connected with, they are listened to, and they are allowed to flower and prosper. And in turn, that affects their families. And even further afield, it has affected the village, because the mere fact that we're here and are becoming internationally known brings people to Umnas. So the hotels are opening, are doing better. Other people who are benefiting are the folk who grow the food up way northwest of us and come down every week with the lorry loads of hay, alfalfa, the people in the village where we buy our Noala. We are the largest consumers of equine food in Morocco. And we don't buy it in sacks from Casablanca that are imported from Europe, where huge tax is plonked on. We buy the raw materials and we make the food up ourselves. And there is a great spirit of community, of coming together. And for example, when I got back from the UK, I expected a few disasters. There were none. The place had been won amazingly well. And Ayub has just come in to me this morning and said, without question, he was taking the truck out. We needed a lot more Noala from Tamsalot. An electricity switch had gone in the technical area underneath the pool here. He was picking one of those up. That needed to be replaced. He was getting some brushes. People needed this, people needed that. He didn't have to come and ask me. All he asked me for was the bank card, and I knew that everything he said was absolutely necessary. Now, what a relief that is for me as I'm getting older, because now I can concentrate a little more on perhaps social media, broadcasting, YouTube, finish my book. And I hope to do that well before I die. So I'm 80 now, I've allocated myself another 10 years. And we're planning for the future. I think what people have realized this week is, although I've moved more onto administration, which needs to be done because we must grow our supporters, otherwise we won't survive. Those £5 a month, they must grow. I can concentrate on that. But because I'm now older, I'm not a pushover. So I will always do what I believe is right, and I will explain it to you as I go along. I'm so grateful to have had the opportunity to listen through YouTube to some of the commentators in the UK who are analysing what perhaps is going wrong in British politics. I personally find it very upsetting. When I qualified as a barrister, I did my pupillage, my training at Doughty Street, which of course is the chambers that the current Prime Minister has come from. I knew all those people well, I valued them all. They taught me a great deal about being brave and being prepared to stand up to people. So I will continue to do that. But without saying too much, I'm so disappointed by the way the Labour movement has gone. As many of you know as well, Charles was a trade union solicitor for most of his working life and acted for many of the large trade unions. And I think he is also, along with me, very conscious of the current working class in the UK who seem to be having quite a bad deal at the moment. But I'm not permitted any longer to talk about politics because we have founded and we run a charity, and that is not permitted under the Charity Commission rules. So I try to be fair, I try to be balanced. I so welcome you all taking time to listen to this, and I hope you'll follow us on social media and watch our next period of growth and the work we do with the community, which of course saves working animals, the backbone of Morocco in many, many ways historically, but also is growing a community. And it is all good. It's good, and we are thrilled. So bye for now.